There we go. And that way we'll have it so people can actually see the recording later. So I'm Boyd Peterson. I'm glad to introduce to you Jim Carroll, a good friend of mine. And as I had mentioned last week, when I first got into doing digital media, I was trying to do everything. And then I realized, no, I needed to be a master of one and then find other people that would be the master in their area that I could connect with. And SEO was one of those that I knew that it would take a lot of work to keep up on it, as it does for social media. And so as I was looking for somebody, I stumbled across Jim, and Jim has impressed me. And I'm very glad to call him my friend, but also that he's someone I trust with my SEO. Now, as I mentioned also last week, we started a new program where we were trying to come up with done for you things so you could do it yourself type programs. And I came up with social media. He's come up with an SEO program. Of course, part of the SEO was social media, but most of it is not. And so I've asked him to do this. We now do a lot of different things together. And so I'm very proud to introduce Jim Carroll, my friend. So go ahead, Jim. Oh, he is an expert at SEO.
Thank you, Boyd. Truly, truly appreciate it. I wish there was a great story that I could tell you guys that we were sitting in a bar somewhere and came up with this great idea to run this conference. But in fact, it didn't happen that way. We just put our heads together and we're trying to think of a way to help our clients, help our customers, help our friends. We both belong to a couple of networking groups and a couple of chambers, and truly thought that this would be the way to go. So this is the second in a series of 6 seminars. This is the second of 6. I'm going to have a little bit of a recap of what we went over last week. We're doing this every other Tuesday until we get all 6 of them in. You'll be able to also watch all of the videos. If you're one of the registered guests in any one of the events, you'll be able to get into, I think, a YouTube channel and see all of them. So it should be good for you, and we'll go from there. My name, of course, is Jim Carroll. I'm the CEO of a company called E2 Total Solutions. We're a full-service search engine optimization and marketing firm. I have a pretty vast experience in the internet. I was adding my years up the other day, and it makes me sound kind of old, but I have in excess of 20 years involved with the internet. And if I was getting a doctorate, that would actually mean that I have 3 doctorates. It takes about 7 years to get one, so I think I'm moving right up. This, of course, this whole series is a product of Boyd and my collaboration. I'm teaching the SEO part of the series, and Boyd is teaching a secondary class on Thursday afternoons at the same time. We won't do it this coming Thursday, but I think the Thursday after that is when Boyd's going to do it again. He can clarify that for you a little bit at the end. But Boyd spoke about having an expertise in one area. And just when you throw out a big term like optimization or social media, you kind of think they overlap. There's a lot of products that we collaborate on, and there's a program called SEO in 360, a website called SEOin360.com, and Reputation Revolution, which is designed to help you defend and protect your reputation online. I'm an instructor. I teach bank code to realtors and other professionals, salespeople. And then there's a new one that we're a channel that we're developing. I just want to drop a bug in your ear called My Local Pro. And it would compete more specifically with one of the home networks where you find qualified craftsmen. And that program is pretty exciting. I've got a lot of excitement going on about that. But enough about that. Let's talk about optimization, which is what we're truly here to talk about. You might ask yourself, why is there a front-end loader on one of my slides here? And it's because we covered so much ground last week. We really laid the foundation in a lot of ways to talk about optimization. We're going to touch on that a little tiny bit as we move forward today. I wanted this to be a little tiny bit more substantive last week. We spoke about a lot of things last week and kind of came to a point towards the end and then pushed through with the first 12 topics. There's 12 topics we're trying to cover every week. So hopefully we'll be a little bit more on task today, and you guys will get some information from this. So basically, there's 200 or 250 markers or signals that, as an SEO expert, that we pay attention to. And I'm just going to tell you right up front that there's no way that you can fix all of those all of the time. And so you kind of pick and choose your battles. I took the 200, over 200 of them, and drilled it down to about 70. That's going to be 12 a week for 6 weeks. And it's really kind of convoluted web we weave. That's why I threw that particular graphic in. That was the last one that I put in, and I put it in about 10 minutes to the hour, so I just barely finished the PowerPoint. It teases me, and I'm kind of famous for not doing anything before I need to. So hopefully you'll get some super benefit out of this. But we've got 70 topics that we're going to cover in the course of the seminar, and not in any particular order. And I was thinking that maybe I should prioritize them. And then I thought, no, I'll leave it the way that they kind of came out, because I want you guys not to think that one is far more important than any others. If there are ones that is critical, I'll certainly mention that to you guys. But think about this. There's 70 topics that I care about enough to have mentioned in a slide or started creating slides for this. One of them was, and I get a kick out of this one, and that was that Jefferson Airplane, or Grace Slick in particular, her manager, was kind of noted as the person that invented search engine optimization. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember Jefferson Airplane or not, but it was a rock band, and general manager was really pissed off that they didn't rank #1 on the first page. He thought they were the best band in the world, and they didn't rank for themselves. So he started throwing around the term SEO, and it's the term that he's accredited for. He didn't invent search engine optimization. He did invent the term SEO. So that's kind of where that came from. A little sidebar real quick is that MSN was the primary search engine at the time, MSN or AOL, and Google was really just a thought. Larry and Sergey had not congealed yet to make that actually be a legitimate search engine. They were using something called Backrub at the time, which was the predecessor, of course, to Google. So I like to talk a little tiny bit about Google, and they control about 92% or 93% of all the searches done in the world every single day. That's a lot of searches. I mean, I can just tell you that. That means that their competitors, and Yahoo and Bing, AOL's still around, MSN, Yandex, Ask. I threw DuckDuckGo in there. A couple of people have been playing around with that because there's billboards all over. But all of those competitors compete for just 8% of the market. But Google controls 92%. All the competition is fighting for 8%. Think about that when you consider that Google controls just the massive search, and then Facebook, or YouTube, excuse me, YouTube is becoming a search engine. People go to YouTube and search. Facebook is considered a search engine these days. They've been monkeying around with their algorithms significantly to make themselves more search friendly so that you can find relevant information, and then that's kind of got them in hot water a little tiny bit with the government. I think there's a target on their back. When you consider how big the big red circles here are, Google and YouTube, and then think of them both as a search engine, and then start to break down the demographics. I know that if you're between 12 and 22 years old, it's been said that every single one of those people spends some legitimate time on YouTube every single day. Go to YouTube and ask it a question every single day. So if you're a 12 or a 14 or 16-year-old, that's where you're going to find information. So think about that. Video is very powerful. Searching by video is very powerful. Receiving your information by video is really the preferred method. So bear that in mind as we're migrating to the future. Boyd, I know we'll talk a great deal about video in his classes, and it's not to be poo-pooed. I think it's probably here to stay. One thing about Google is that they have a big sign on the wall, and that is their mission statement. Their mission statement is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. So that is their mission statement. And I want to point out, and it's a big thing to say, they don't say, we want to organize the English speaking information, or we want to organize the Arabic information, or the Mexican or Hispanic information. We want to organize everything. And so when you start to contemplate how many servers that is and how many spiders they have out crawling around, there's a new website launched about every second, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. There's that much new information that's being sent out there. I'm going to show you in this program how to kind of raise to the top of that fray of websites. There's going to be a bunch of sites that aren't worthy to be ranked. There's going to be a bunch of websites that they don't really even care if they get ranked. We haven't spoken too much about that, but contemplate this for a second. If you're a e-commerce website, you certainly need to be found so people can buy your wares. If you're a business that sells services, you certainly need to be found. Some people just don't ever care that they actually get visitors to their website. I would call that a brochure site. Brochure site, some people just, it's kind of a vanity thing. They want to say that they have a domain and throw up a couple of cool pictures, and that's it. And then there's sites that will ultimately serve no greater purpose. That might be a site that you throw up for a family reunion. So there's all of those things in between. People that expect or are planning on making a living with it, and other people that they're going to show some pictures of Aunt Martha at the family reunion. It might stay up for a couple of years and they take it down. So think about what a website is actually for. Then start to think about its value or how you want it categorized. Here's one of my little secrets. There's 3 little secrets that I'm going to share with you today. Is that Google is the only search engine we try to satisfy. Google is the only search engine we try to satisfy. That's primarily because they don't have any competition. If we took all of those other search engines and piled them together and they were fighting for 8% of the market, we don't care about 8% of the market. The only client that we're trying to satisfy is the Google search engine algorithm. That is my client. When I'm doing SEO for someone, that's all we talk about is Google and how Google perceives what it is that we're doing to the website, or how they see that information we're changing on the website to make them better. I have a couple of clients that I'll mention later on. One of them, I'll go ahead and name them by name right now. A company called High Sky RV Park. They're based out of Switzerland. That's where the owner lives, I should say. And their company's physically located in Washington State. And we are tweaking. They have a little over 90,000 SKUs. And we're manipulating every one of those SKUs, the metadata that happens to it. We have probably 6 full-time people right now just going through the site, correcting metadata, correcting content, making sure that there's nothing duplicate with other competitors or manufacturers. We're making that site as unique as we can possibly be. We've taken it from position over 100. It was higher than 100 when we got engaged with them this last spring. And right now, maybe 3-4 months later, they're position 20 basically. And they're still making, their revenues have increased significantly, and we still haven't got them to the first page yet. We're working on it. So all we're trying to do is satisfy the Google algorithm. And we spend a lot of time inside the Google console. We spend a lot of time, checking our own work. There's a lot of things when you have 90,000 different unique products or SKUs that you have to adjust. It's a pretty significant amount of things that are going on there. We also are driving links and doing some other stuff with social media with them as well. So this is a slide that you'll see, and I suspect you're going to see it in every single one of my presentations. And that is what you do. This is good optimization. So you can see that there's 1/3 of my pie is on-site content. It's the metadata. It's the on-page text, the words that you actually see that the viewer reads. The metadata, you guys don't see, the spiders see it. And then the front page stuff that you do see. If there's a conflict between those two bits of information, it's a serious problem. Google's going to detect that and punish you or reward you accordingly. Are all the alt tags, are all the descriptions good? Have fresh content. Blogging is the best way to get fresh content. And that's very, very important, keeping the internet fresh. We're going to talk about how Google sees their role a little bit later on. So link building is something that I truly have a passion for. I could talk about that for just hours and hours and hours on end, but you have appropriate links from appropriate site. And so that's 1/3 of my puzzle. And then of course, social media has become relevant. Boyd and I get to rib him a little tiny bit. I mean, that's what he does. Boyd does social media and he does a fabulous job of it. But I can remember a day before Facebook, and we were optimizing sites back then. So it's the advent of social media. Google's responded accordingly, with reviews being horrifically important, and you know, how many mentions you get and where you get them and how you're mentioned. And social media is also, I'm afraid, here to stay. So continue to think of them as in a very positive light. Okay. First 12 steps that we spoke about, these are it. And if you guys are signed up for the course, you'll be able to go back and get all of these things. It's understanding terminology. It's understanding that you need a Google Search Console. You need Bing's Webmaster Tools, Google Analytics. You must set that up. You need friendly URLs. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. You must have an SSL certificate. I can't overemphasize that. Use more use from the Search Console, text files, visibility settings, and menu and site structure. Those are all pretty high level, pretty basic things that we covered in last week. This is what we're going to talk about this week. We're going to talk about specifically what is an XML sitemap and how you get it submitted to the search engine. We are going to talk about the Google Search Console and how to check for sitemap errors there. We're going to talk about structured data. What is structured data? And then, of course, how to test that structured data, or schema data is another word for it once it's been implemented. What is a breadcrumb and how do you use breadcrumbs? We're going to talk about that. Here's one of my favorite things. Item number 19 is that, do you have a canonical URL? And we're going to talk about what that is. You have a tag that lets translation happen on your website. What do you do with a 404 error or a 404 page? You always need to work on your load balancing or your load speed, your speed with which a site will render. You need to optimize your logos and favicons. I have a great story about that. You need to use easy loading, and this is something that Google's paying a great deal of attention to. If you're not using easy loading, your site might load slower, and I'll explain why in just a minute. Then, of course, every homepage should have a title tag. We're going to talk about that. So, bonus today, and those of you that have been in any of my networking meetings the last week or so knew that I was going to throw out a bonus. The bonus today is 5 ways to boost your Core Vitals score. Core Vitals is a core update to the algorithm. It's a major update. You know, you might have heard words like hummingbird and panda. This is a core update, just like one of those were. And so it really affects the way Google is, the direction that they're going, and I'll explain why when we get to that part of the presentation. So last week we talked a great deal about research, and if you're going to build a website, do you know what the keywords should be? Do you know what the niche is? Do you know if you have any competition? Those are all business kind of rules. This is a secondary type of list that I'm pulling some information from. When I got done with the research part and moved on to the on-page stuff, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that starts to fall into here, and hopefully we're clarifying that for you as we go through this. It's site performance and site organization and content, what kind of schema data, what kind of plan you have. Is your internal CSS code, is that working for you or against you? And then, of course, the URLs. You have canonical URLs and of course, schema data. So I didn't say this before, but Boyd's kind of monitoring the chat room. And if you've got a question, he can pull that's relevant. He kind of knows the outline of my program and can interrupt me if you guys come up with a question that's important. And I'm more than willing to stop at any time and really talk about that. So one thing that kind of raised its ugly head after the first week was that people didn't understand where to make some of these changes. There's no great answer to that. So we're going to talk about changes that need to be done inside the code. This particular graphic that I have over here is a sitemap. It came from sitemaps.org. And I'm going to give you a little tip on sitemaps.org later. But you need to have a sitemap. And this sitemap, it actually goes 50 pages longer than that. It's for a site, has a little over 300 pages. And I didn't pull all 300 of them. This is what the architecture or the structure of a well-organized sitemap looks like. And so that needs to be changed in the code on a site. Unless you're a coder or you have a tool, a really cool tool, you're not going to maybe be able to do that yourself. But there are tools that are available that, like sitemaps.org, help you create that structure. Again, all we're trying to do is satisfy Google's need to actually understand that there's more pages on that site. If you don't have a sitemap, the only page it finds first is your home page. And then after that, it has to go out and find any additional pages. You guys all registered for this seminar at pmedia.com/seminars. If there wasn't a sitemap, then Google would just have to stumble around and finally find the /seminars page. By creating a sitemap inside of WordPress, we said, hey, look, there is a bpmedia.com/seminars. But boom, Google found it, it indexed it, it ranks it, and now it sits in that pile of great sites that Google can publish. So that's just one example of the code that we're trying to change in these seminars. I'm trying to give you a greater understanding of how to do that. Some of the stuff needs to be done by the hosting provider. For example, you can't just say, oh, I want a canonical URL. You have to contact your hosting provider and say, I want to be HTTPS. I want to render as HTTP, then it will add the S for you. I want to be a www. So multiple ways that Google can find your site. It's going to be beneficial for you. Link building, it's a chore, and you can address that with colleagues or colleagues in the same business. I've got colleagues all do the same thing that I do all over the country, and in fact all over the world. But we sometimes swap links. I'll call my friend Gary in Woodstock, Vermont, and say, Gary, I'm writing a blog about something that you do, so I'm going to send a link to your website. And then he's got an inbound link from my site, which has authority, his site. Then a couple weeks later, he'll call me and say, hey, I just gave you a couple of links or mentions in my blog post. And so we're cross-linking. And you can do that with colleagues, you can do it with business associates, you can do it with vendors. There's a lot of ways to do that with their colleagues in business. Some of the changes are just straight up need to be done with programmers. There's, not every one of you is going to speak programmer language. There's a half a dozen I can name. But, you're going to have to hire somebody at some point to probably do that. I can read most of it. I'm not a programmer, so I can tell if it's doing what it's supposed to, but sometimes you need a professional, and it's just a fact. You can add plugins, especially with WordPress sites or Dremel or Joomla sites. There's all kinds of programmers out there that write plugins for these things. So don't be afraid to use them. If you keep your plugins up to date, keep your site core up to date, the core WordPress application, it's no problem using plugins. And if you find one that breaks your site, disable it. I mean, keep track of your site, pay attention to what's going on with your site. You can also use guest posts to acquire links and to acquire real relevant information. So these are just some samples of places that you can go you need to go to make all these changes that we're going to be talking about. So items 13 and 14 on our list are optimize your XML sitemap and submit it to the search engines. And then the Google Search Console, check your sitemap errors. So this is effectively what a sitemap looks like. It looks very similar to the one that I showed you on the other page. This is what it looks like if you were just to put it in a spreadsheet. And there's a couple of things that happen here that are pretty important. First of all, this is from a site called Yoast SEO. And you can see that there's a sitemap. You can see that there's an XML extension, but saying that it's an XML sitemap. Sitemap, it's called an external markup language. That's why it's XML. And so you need to be able to get a sitemap like this and put it in place. I'm going to show you, I think, the next slide, what I wanted to show you. Okay, so this is a place that you can go, and it's inside of your Google console, because we recommended last week that every one of you guys set up a Google console. It's formerly Webmaster Tools, but it's called the Google console today. You can go in there and check your sitemap, and it will give you a code under the settings. If there's a problem with it, it'll tell you that there's an error. You put that in, hit submit, and then it will tell you if it renders properly or if there's an error. So you can create a sitemap with a tool that I'm going to show you guys later, and then check it with the Google Search Console. So that's a great way to spend your evenings doing that. Items 15, 16, and 17 and 18 are kind of two things that run more or less in line. Add structured data to your homepage, and then test your structured data or markup implementation. The structured data is considered a markup language. So structured data is another methodology to tell Google you have a plan for your website. So if there's structured data, let's see. So here are two examples of structured data. So this one says that, hey, I have homemade ice cream. Here's some recipes. And then it talks a little tiny bit about making homemade ice cream. In this particular example down below it, it talks about, hey, we're going to make lasagna. Then it gives ingredients. It tells you exactly how to do it. Which of those two do you think that Google would like to render? If you're searching for lasagna, you're going to want to render this website because this information is much more relevant. It's much more structured, and clearly you know what you're talking about. Here you're talking about, hey, let's have some ice cream. Maybe we'll make some handmade ice cream later. That's not as structured as this. The more structured that you can put in your meta description, the more that you're going to render correctly on Google. I whiskered on my nose. So breadcrumbs are another way to tell Google what the site's about, what the page is about. These are two examples. This is one here. This is from Amazon, and you can see that going electronics, computer accessories, computer peripherals. It's drilling down what this actual page is about. This is a breadcrumb trail from Amazon. Electronics, computers, accessories, computer accessories, and peripherals. So you just drill down that information more and more. What helps the surfer? It helps the surfer find what they're looking for. First, it helps Google index that page. If Google indexes the page, then they're going to render it when Google is, or a server is actually looking for that data. This is another one, and I forget who this was from. Oh, shoes. So when you're talking about shoes, of course, you say, are they men's shoes? Are they black? Are they gray? Are they white? Are they Nike? You can just start with that big funnel and drill it down and have your breadcrumbs be more and more specific. So if somebody goes to Google and searches for, I need some men's black, tennis shoes, they're going to be able to render the best information. So keep talking about how Google sees the world, how Google sees things, and what Google wants to do, what their core vitals update is to satisfy was the need of the surfer. They always look at it through the eyes of the end user. So by being able to put a search in that says men's black tennis shoes, that's a very specific search criteria. Now by having the breadcrumbs set appropriately, this site is more likely to render than just somebody that sells shoes. And you know, people might pick on Amazon, and Amazon has a gaggle of programmers and a gaggle of people that care about a lot of things. If you think about Amazon, they deserve to rank at the top of most searches because they have a criteria that says, here's our electronics page, here's our computers and accessories page, here's our computer peripherals page. So if somebody's searching for computers and accessories, Amazon should rank for that because they have breadcrumbs that show this is what that page is exactly about. So they don't show the home page of Amazon, they show the page is computers, accessories, and peripherals. So they deserve to rank there, not because they're the monster in the room, because they've done everything correctly. Okay, moving right along here, we've got items 19 and 20 and 20 and 21. The use of a canonical URL. That's a fancy word. It means more than one way to find the website. And this change generally needs to be done on a server level. There's very few people that go in and do it themselves. I suppose if you're familiar with your cPanel at your hosting provider, then you could. It's worth a call to say, hey, call your hosting provider and say, I need a canonical URL for my website. And a canonical URL is going to be a www. It's going to be, if they put in HTTP : it's going to re-render as HTTPS because you have to have the HTTPS, the secure socket layer. So even if you type it in incorrectly, HTTP : it will automatically regenerate and render as HTTP with the S. So having more than one methodology to find your website is a great thing. That's probably of most of the clients that I ever bring on. That's one of the very first things I point out is that there's only one way to get to your website. And if that method's broken for whatever reason, your site's not going to render. So we just automatically fix that just going out of the chute. There's a, and I'm going to screw this up, but it's a HREF language tag. And that's a HREF language tag. And all that means is that it tells Google this page exists in another language, or better yet, this page can be translated into another language. So if you have a multilingual site, by all means include these tags in all of your pages. If you have a clientele or an audience that is multilingual, include these tags in all of your pages. It's really, really important that you get the right information to the right people all of the time. And if they can't understand what you're saying or the language, then that means that you're not servicing the end user. Therefore, Google is going to say, look, he doesn't care enough about these other people that speak another language. You know, when it's a little simple code extension for you guys to be able to let the rest of the world see it, it makes sense to satisfy Google's need and do that. 404, this is a great graphic of a 404 error, and you've all run across them at times, one time or another. And 404 error just means that the page doesn't exist anymore. If any of you are active, and we all should be active, we're always modifying our site, we're always updating our site, we're making changes to our site, we're making changes to the naming conventions. All of those things should be happening. Occasionally you're going to get a page that has a 404 error. As soon as you get that page, you can do a redirect on that page and have it render as something else. But what you want to say is something nice like this. It says, this page you were looking for no longer exists. Perhaps you can go back to the home page, and that's actually an active link that will drive them back to the home page. So if somebody requests from your site a page that doesn't exist anymore or is non-existent to begin with, give them the opportunity to get back to the home page. Don't, you know, have it be a lost customer. Just give them the opportunity, like, oh, maybe they didn't type in their URL wrong. Give them the chance to get back to that. So make a nice page like this that will render in place of a big red, 404 error. You're an idiot. You didn't type in the URL correctly or whatever. Be nice and create pages like this that will help. I need to plug in my computer here in just a second. Let me go back. So it says that always work on load speed. And you guys have heard me harp about this for a long time. Google cares specifically about the load speed time. That can only be really corrected on a variety of levels. But what it's going to do is require a little bit of attention with the hosting provider. If your hosting provider sticks you on a server with 1,000 other websites, and there's no bandwidth on those CPUs inside that computer, then it's going to have speed degradation, or site speed degradation is the way we call it. So you want to make sure that you're on it. There's a limited number of sites on that server. You want to make sure that there's load balancing on the server. Load balancing would mean if one site's getting hit really, really hard with traffic, that it's either going to migrate to another CPU or to manage that, balance that traffic a little bit differently. You guys will forgive me for 2 seconds. I'm just going to walk across the room and plug this in. Okay, I'm back. So that's one way that you can handle your load speed. It's on a server level. The other way that you can handle that is on your own images. And I'm going to talk about images in just a second. Right here, we're going to go right into optimizing your logos and favicons. In unison with that, all of your images should be minimized. Basically, photographers, Boyd and I were talking about photography before the show today, and we take them in really high resolution formats. Well, the internet renders everything at 72 dpi or dots per inch. A normal printer might want things at 300 dpi or sometimes 600 dpi. So if there's 600 dpi, it's almost 7 times more information than you need to actually render it on a computer screen. So what happens is, if you don't minimize the size of your images or the data inside those images, and you're sending too much information to the data or to the internet, so all of that information has to be sent across the internet and then consumed by the application that they're rendering with, by a browser, for example, and then reconfigure that information into an image. So if you have 10 times or 6 times or 8 times more information than what they need, it's going to slow things down. So you need to use some tools. I'm going to use, most of you guys, I assume, are using WordPress these days. There's a couple of tools. There's a site called Tiny PNG that actually minimizes images of the size of your images. You download it. There's a free version. It runs in the background. The reason I smiled when I pulled this slide up next is because I had a logo on a site. I control the site for Murray Chamber of Commerce, and site we made some changes, and what happened was one of my designers loaded an image that was maybe 50 times the amount of data that it actually needed. I mean, it was enormous. And all of a sudden, the site started crawling. I noticed that it was slow. A couple of my other programmers noticed it was slow. I mean, it just was killing us across the board. And but we had to go in there and start to poke around and see what was wrong with it. And we found that one image that was a problem. But you can optimize your images. You can optimize your favicon. Everything should be optimized. You can use something called lazy loading, which is a WP rocket. Lazy loading means that anything above the fold, you don't render before you need to. So what that means is, if you've got this much space, and this much is all you're going to see inside the browser, it's not going to load anything below that browser until you scroll up, and it needs to. So the lazy loading trick that you can use, and that's with optimization called WP Rocket. Item number 25 today is every homepage must have a title tag. So you can see here, oops, you'll see here that there's title tags in every one of these cases. This particular page had, it had like 300 pages, this particular site, when I scanned it. And every one of them was a unique title tag. That's very beneficial, to have a unique title tag on every single page, so that Google can distinguish between them. All of this information is just primarily information that Google's going to understand, that the spiders are going to understand, before it actually starts to render the site. You want all of those things in there appropriately and beforehand. This is the big secret of the day, and that is, these are reports that I pulled, and you can see that these are just 3 reports that I pull of maybe 100 reports I could pull on the effectiveness, the value of any site. And you can see that they're all different. You're never going to probably get all green squares in here. That would be, in a perfect world, this would be all green squares. You can see here that their load speed time is not that great. You can see here how it renders across multiple platforms. You can see here that they get 94 out of 100 on their load speed time. Full site renders in 1.2 seconds, which is fast enough for a mobile device. So these are just a gaggle of reports that I can pull. There's a million different ways to look at a website. You kind of need to pick and choose your battles. And so be real conscientious of what you're doing as far as that goes. That's the big secret, is that you're never going to probably get it all done at the same time. Next thing that I want to point out is that there is no silver bullets or shortcuts in optimization. This also is a slide that I reused, but I want to drive the point home. You can affect, some things that you do will have a great effect, some things a little effect. It's up to you to kind of pick and choose the battles. And winners are going to be the ones that we talk about, are the ones that I harp on. By the time we get down to 70 of them, you guys are going to know everything you need to know, but then you still have to go back and pick and choose your battles. You guys, I've been known to say this before, that SEO is a rodeo, not a ballet. You need to get in there and get your feet dirty a little tiny bit, and earn the pain and the punishment and get the reward. It's not all simple stuff. It might require a little bit of background research on your part, or contacting a professional. You can get it all done yourself if you want to. That's the whole point of this do-it-yourself program. Okay. Big secret for today has to do with the core updates, and you kind of have to ask yourself, what is a search engine's job, and how do they do their job? Well, the search engine's job is to make the internet fresh. If you searched for anything, every time you did that search, you got exactly the same information, pretty soon you'd get tired of that information and quit going back. You wouldn't go to Google, or you wouldn't go to the internet anymore and request information. So Google's job, if you think about it, is to literally keep the internet fresh. That's why there's this nice, fresh graphic saying that we're keeping the internet fresh, we're keeping it clean. And so it's been argued that the basic algorithm, they alter it as many as 5 to 7 times a day. That's not a core update, that's a minor tweak. And so if you're on position 1 today, tomorrow you might be on position 3, the next day you might be on position 7, and then the next day you might be back on position 2. We're always tweaking those algorithms to make sure that the internet is always in flux. It's never predictable. That's what this core update had a lot to do with. The next slide talks about it more in detail, but I'm going to say load speed, interactivity, visual stability, mobile friendly, HTTPS, the security, and then no pop-ups. Those are all mandatory. I'll go talk about those on this slide. Okay. And we're getting real close to the end. I think we're running out of time. I got 6 minutes, it looks like. So the whole point of the core update, the Web Vitals update, is to improve the user experience. Google came right out and said that. They rarely do those, make those types of statements, but they said the new Google ranking factor is to satisfy the user or improve the user experience. So to do that, there's 6 things that they told us to do. One of them is to optimize your image. Make everything load quickly. And I harp on that, and I harp on it, and I harp on it. I'm going to give you guys a secret. Today, where everybody is using their phone, so I can't see my phone. There it is. I'm holding out my phone. So everybody's using their phone more and more and more. The problem with the phone is that we don't have the speed that we do when we're using our laptop or our home computers. So to satisfy that need for speed and make things render more quickly, Google is really, really focusing in this update on the images, on the speed of things that load. So you hear me, harp on it, and I'm going to continue to harp on it as long as Google does. Make those images load more quickly. Make that website load more quickly because it enhances the user experience. If you have a website that loads in 9 seconds on your cell phone, how many of you guys are going to wait 9 seconds for a page to load? Nobody raised their hand, I'm sure of it. But if it loads in 1 second or a half a second, that's a winner. And Google will actually reward you if you're loading quickly. It'll start to preload those assets in the background, just like the tool that I was telling you about. So take every advantage that you can to improve your speed. Stabilize loading specific, specifying the room for images. What I'm saying with that is that if you have a box that's this big, or I can't see this big, and you're leaving not much room for the image, or you're letting the image define its own room, then it's going to take more room and it's going to take more time to load. It's going to load the whole image. So by creating a box that's very specific, you can tell the web page how much room is allowed for that image and to load it in just that space, and it'll load more quickly. You also need to optimize the image at that time. So speed up your server. That goes without any question. The faster the server, the better off you're going to be. Look into critical CSS. CSS is kind of a cool code that we tell the website what to do or what we want it to do. So by manipulating the CSS code, this is probably a little bit higher level. This is going to take a programmer to do it. You tell it not to load anything of the fold. So we're not even going to do anything with images below the fold until there's a request for it, or you start to migrate up that page. Then it can download that information as it needs. There's no point in loading anything below the fold because surfer might go off to another page. Don't waste the computer time or the CPU time in loading the wrong information or information that's never going to be manipulated or viewed. Then improve your third-party scripts. There's third-party scripts that we load onto a website that it just absolutely kills the speed. These are plugins. I mean, that's what it is, basically. A third-party script's a plugin. And so make sure that your plugins work. When you're going into your WordPress to find an appropriate plugin, make sure it has a lot of views and a lot of stars. If it's only got 300 views and 2 people have bothered to, or 300 downloads, excuse me, and only 2 or 3 people have bothered to leave a remark or a star, don't monkey with that. Find something that has 1 million downloads, that it has 5 stars or 4.9 stars or something like that. That means that everybody else is happy with it. You're not, even if you're downloading plugins, it doesn't mean that you have to test it for them. That's basically what happens. A programmer will, I call him Bob in the basement. Bob in the basement will create a plugin and then push it out there because it's free. So then everybody will debug it for him. Well, don't get in the business of debugging anybody else's stuff. Only use replicable plugins. So there, that's enough about that. A couple more slides real quick. Gary Horsman, who's a good friend of mine, has been known to say, although you may not always agree with their methods, tactics, or outcome, Google is always predictable. And that's an interesting statement. Google is always predictable, foreseeable in the way their outcome, the way that they will always do the right thing for the end user, accurate in their site and truthful in its valuations. So this is a guy that is an SEO expert, and he's saying that Google is predictable. They're going to do the right thing for the end user, and they're truthful in their valuations. I don't care, I'm not going to even talk about politics, but they're truthful in the way that they determine that whether they're valuable for the end user. So that's what my buddy said, Gary Horsman. Now we're to the point of the thing where you get almost free stuff. At the end of every one of these shows, we give away free stuff. I'm going to tell you guys that it's almost free stuff. It's going to cost you 1 cent. And this is a application that helps you create the XML sitemap. That graphic that I had a little bit earlier in the program talked about how to create a sitemap. If you will buy this XML sitemap for 1 cent, and it's 1 cent only because my PayPal account will let me charge you nothing, or I would in fact charge you nothing. But if you spend the 1 cent, this is an application that you can turn loose on your site and tell it to create an XML sitemap for you, and then you can publish that to your Google Search Console, and all of your pages will be included in an XML sitemap. People will find them, rank them, and find everything on your website quicker. So that is it for today. Thank you so much for your time. I would like all of you guys to go to facebook.com/pages/E2 Total Solutions/reviews and leave me a review. I need more Facebook reviews. So please take the time and go find my website, E2 Total Solutions. Leave me a review. Thank you. And I'm ready for any questions if you've got some.
I'm just hopping on here real quick. A couple things I wanted to point out is in the chat, I have put in the last video that Jim did. That was 2 weeks ago. That was the first video of this 6-video series. And so if you missed it or you want to review it, you may go and review it there. The second thing I wanted to point out is to get that XML sitemap program, go to the address I put in the website as well, which is, or in the chat box as well. It's https://seon360.com. So you can click on either of those and you can go right to them, or you can copy them and paste them into your browser if you'd like. And so questions, anyone have questions? I've got a few people saying great session. Thank you a lot. Have someone who said, wow, this is a bit overwhelming, but I can see how I can actually do this myself now. And
Absolutely.
Thank you for this great information. Can't wait till next time. So that's the type of things we're getting right now. So go leave those reviews on our site. And also when you go to, you can go to our YouTube channel, which is SEO in 360, all separated as words. So SEO space in space 360. You can go there and there are 4 videos in there. Now, some of those videos are to bring people to this these seminars. But then one of them is an hour-and-a-half program that Jim and I did back in May. And it was 10 SEO secrets for do-it-yourself entrepreneurs. And we talked a lot about the top 10 things that SEO needs. But then we went into the series, and we have Jim's program on there, the last recording, the SEO checklist that'll help you become an SEO expert yourself for your site. So you can, and I just uploaded that, and well, actually I uploaded it a few days ago, but I just added the cover to it and some other things to it, so you'll be able to find it now. And
now we know what Boyd does when I'm speaking. He's adding covers.
Well, it wasn't designing covers. I was actually going in and saying, oops, I didn't put any description in there and things like that. And I'm going, oh, crap, here we go. And I've also, that 10 secrets is hidden for some reason. I got to go in there and change that so that people
make it easy for everyone to find. That's the
That's
whole
what I want.
thing.
I want that to be a public thing, and there we go. And so now it's saved, and you'll be able to see that 10 secrets SEO tips and tricks. And so, I even give you what those 10 things we're going to cover. So if you want to know more about it, you can see that and then go into it. Now, anyway, go ahead.
Everyone invite a friend to that.
Yeah, invite a friend. Have them take a look. People who need this kind of stuff, please let them know so that they can go and find this. And we're glad to give things away. I had somebody call me the other day and he says, why are you giving away this kind of information? I sell it on the internet and I make a killing on it. Why are you just giving it away? And I'm going, because people have time on their hands. People would like to do it themselves. People don't want to have to pay thousands of dollars to have someone else do it, where with a little bit of training, they can do it themselves. And so at some point, maybe we'll put a price on this, but we want you to succeed. We want you to be able to do it. And one of the cool things is this SEO and 360 website gives you all kinds of tools, and every month we add some more tools to it, and they're cool tools, books, things that you can do. And in fact, we're going to be doing some little mini trainings on kind of an overview of each of these tools here in the next few weeks. So you can say, oh yeah, here's this, and what does this do? And you know, the descriptions tell you a little bit, but sometimes they're a little cryptic. And so we're going to give you some mini reviews on what each of those are about.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You know, and Boyd, you try to put a price on this, and I'm just going to tell you it's priceless. So.
Well, it is, yeah. You know, and it. He was so mad because he says we're giving away the secrets that he sells, and I'm going, well, how much do you make? He sells this for $9.97, and you know, it's a one-time thing. You go in, you buy it, you go and watch all of his videos, and I'm going, well, maybe we're in the wrong business. Maybe we ought to be selling the information.
Maybe we're foolish, but I enjoy it.
That's it. We enjoy what we do, and so hopefully you are going to get something out of this and be able to make your business get more business, and that's the bottom line for any of our programs. Now, also, I'm going to tell you real quickly about the one. I'm going to stop the recording real